want to introduce are two, I'm calling them guests. They're regular co-hosts. You know them, and they're back by popular demand. But real quickly, for anybody that doesn't know Rob and Helen, let me briefly introduce them. So Rob Palmer has been on the show a few times, and he has had a diverse career in engineering, having worked as a spacecraft designer, computer programmer, and software systems engineer. He began writing for Skeptical Inquirer in 2018, and to date has had 60 articles published by the Skeptical Inquirer and other skeptic media. He writes about contemporary skeptical issues, and he has interviewed individuals as diverse as astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson, Penn Jillette, John Delancey, Thomas Westbrook, Drew McCoy, and Seth Andrews, and Richard Dawkins. He's a public speaker, has given talks for various skeptic and humanist groups, including RfR and including DragonCon, 3 times at SciCon, and that's the annual conference of the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry. He has been interviewed about his work on various podcasts and YouTube shows, including The Skeptic Zone, Big Picture Science, Banachek's Brain, The Phil Ferguson Show, and The Thinking Atheist. And then we also have Helen Greene, who you see often as well. She currently lives in Sarasota, Florida, has a degree in psychology from the University of South Florida, works in human resourcing, is an LGBTQIA+ advocate. She also enjoys spending time with her hubby and kids, loves sci-fi and horror movies. Yes, me too. Is a huge Tolkien nerd, and she's also a regular co-host on RfR, in addition to being an RfR ambassador, support group leader, and fearless psychic, aka sidekick. And she is also a new co-host on the Left of the Valley podcast. So definitely check that out. Now, you guys both have really long and impressive CVs. So thank you for joining us. Welcome, Helen, and welcome, Rob. Thanks for being here.
Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and happy whatever else.
Yes. Happy Festivus, everybody.
Yes, a holiday for the rest of us.
Exactly.
And apparently Yule, which I didn't actually know was a specific thing. Yesterday I was at a square dance, and the caller's wife is a Wiccan. And she said, yeah, you know, Christmas is not Christian. It's pagan. It's like, yeah, I know that.
Yeah,
she was kind of surprised because most people don't agree with that.
I celebrate Yule every year instead of celebrating Christmas, just because I'm a rebel and I don't want to celebrate Christian holidays. So I celebrate Yule.
So how does one celebrate Yule? You talked about it a little earlier, but break it down for us. How do we enjoy Yule?
So the reason why I celebrate Yule, because I was pagan for a while, but the reason why we celebrate it is because during the winter solstice, between the 20th and usually it can be up to 12 days, because it gets, if you go into pagan ideas and stuff like that, that it was 12 days after the winter solstice that they would celebrate this holiday. And it also relates back to Saturnalia, but I don't want to go into all of that. But basically, because this is during the winter solstice, which is like the 20th to the 21st, it is in the tradition that I know, it is the shortest day of the year. So the sun is going to come back, the days are going to get longer. And pagans, because you lived and died by the sun, you wanted your son to come back so there would be life and abundance and things like that, because winter sucked, especially if you were an agriculture society where, you know, food wasn't always abundant and there was diseases, sickness, and all those sort of things. So once those days started getting longer, there was a reason to celebrate. So that is why I celebrate Yule, because even as an atheist, because we are nature, we are a part of nature. So on a psychological level, it connects me with that rhythm of the year. So that's why we celebrate it. And what we do is a tradition that we have not let go of is, in Celtic traditions, there's the Holly King and the Oak King, and the Holly King rules winter. And then the Oak King is going to come back during the springtime and bring all his fertility and life back to the earth. And usually they duke it out in the Celtic mythology, but what we do is that my friends and I have an insult battle. So my best friend, my husband is always the Oak King, and my best friend is always the Holly King, and everybody writes insults down and they duke it out, and it's usually really, really funny. And I make mulled wine, and we hang out, and I always do a white elephant gift exchange and stuff like that. So I do that every year. So I've been doing this now. I started, God, like 15 years ago. So we've been doing this every year, and like even my secular friends that have never been pagan like it, because there's no it's very light. Like I don't attach any sort of religious significance to anything, but these are traditions that everybody likes to do, and it's a great time. So that is why we celebrate Yule. So
I love it.
yeah.
That is an excellent description. I feel like that's something that anyone could participate in if they so chose. Yeah. Well, how about you, Rob? Do you celebrate anything in particular this time of year?
Well, so I was raised Catholic and I married somebody with a Jewish tradition. So we kind of it took some decades to get to the point where we have a 6 foot tree, maybe not quite that long. But I remember when we first were married and we moved in together, and I wanted to put up a Christmas tree when it came. So I don't want that in my house. People are going to think I'm Christian. So we got like a 1 foot thing and put a little tiny thing on it. So okay, it's a Hanukkah bush, so that was okay. And then the next year, it's a little small. Let's get a bigger one. Then maybe it was 2 foot, and it took a while. But now I have a 6 foot tree. But there are no religious symbols on it whatsoever. The topper is a snowman. I have many, many, many Star Trek ships on it that light up. Various snowflakes and candy canes and things like that. But no angels. Sorry.
I love that. That does not surprise me at all that you have Star Trek Christmas tree ornaments. That fits perfectly with what I was imagining at your house.
And oddly, that was from my mom, who she got into the tradition of every year she'd send me a new Hallmark ornament, and she knew I liked Star Trek, although she didn't know the difference between Mr. Spock and Darth Vader, but she got me all the Star Trek ships.
Wow. Well, that's fair. She never accidentally got you any Star Wars ships or anything like
I
that?
don't know that they had them at the time that was happening. Now there are a lot of Star Wars ornaments for sure. Yeah, and the other thing is, if anyone has ever seen the fantastic Saturday Night Live, I want to say stop motion skit from TV Funhouse, it's Christmas Time for the Jews. That's kind of what we do. We go to Chinese food because that's the only kind of restaurant that's open. If we're not getting together with family, especially now, we don't do that anymore because they've passed on. It's Chinese food with friends, and actually, mentioning Star Wars, not extremely recently, but like 5, 6, 7 years ago, there was a Star Wars film released at Christmas time, and we did that with friends. It was that movie and Chinese food.
I love that.
We do Indian food every Christmas, so that's what me and my husband do. We go out for Indian food on Christmas Day.
Now, how did that start? Is it because it's one of the only places around you that is consistently open on Christmas?
Yes, yeah. Yes, and we're both huge Indian food people, and we don't celebrate Christmas really. Like if our friends invite us over, we'll do food and stuff like that, but it's usually we're spending the holiday by ourselves because we don't really celebrate it. And a lot of our friends, because I don't really, all my family's in New Hampshire, and so there's no family around, and so, and all my friends have their own family traditions that they do, so we just started going up for Indian food every Christmas.
Do you do light decorations on the house?
We used to, but now my husband's gotten lazy, so we don't decorate the yard anymore, which is fine.
So I have never done that, and in fact, we just came home from a 2-week holiday and in that time, all the neighbors put up their lights, and we drove down because we got home very late at night. Oh, every single house except ours has lights on it, and yeah, I've never done it. Not necessarily because my wife is Jewish, and it seemed to misrepresent the the nature of our household, but I am lazy too, so it's like, no, I'm not climbing up on ladders every year and twice put them up, take them down, not doing it.
Like we did it more when the kids were little, but now that, you know, my oldest is away, like in college, and my son is 19 years old, like they don't care anymore. So when they were younger, like you want to have that, like, you know, feeling of the holidays for your children. But now that they're older, we're kind of like, you know, it's like, I don't want to put up Christmas lights around the house, and I don't blame him.
The one kind of decorate, I don't mind lights. I really like lights. In fact, on our vacation, we were in Aruba, and there's this one house on the top of a hill that literally burns out their electric grid, and they had to make upgrades for them. Absolutely amazing. You know, they ask for donations when you go. There must be 1 million lights all over their property, and it's huge. So I like that kind of thing, and we'll go look at it. I don't like the blow up things, especially because the way they work, all the ones I've seen, is if the fan is not on in the daytime, they're just lying flat on the lawn, and it looks like Die Hard. It looks like a Christmas massacre. There's a dead Santa, there's a dead reindeer, there's a dead elf, because they're all flat.
Well, there was a really great meme that I saw that somebody had taken an elf, like a gnome, and give him like a lightsaber, and then all the blow-ups were like dead in their yard, and I was like, that is great. I appreciate that.
I love it.
So my neighbor down the block has those. And in the day, at night it's fine. They're lit up and they're blown. But then they shut it off in the daytime, and it looks horrible. It's just as a big plastic bags all over their lawn. It's like, I don't get it.
Yeah, it's some of the extravagant decorations. I mean, it's like the National Lampoon's movie where, you know, the whole, you know, neighborhood is lit up by the lights on their roof. It's a little bit extra.
That's the way that place was in Aruba. It's been like every year they add thousands more lights, and it's like everyone from the island goes there to see it, and like none of their neighbors have lights, because how could you possibly compete with that?
Yeah, it would look Go ahead.
There's a place in Fort Myers that they do tours. Like they have this huge property, and I've been, and it's like 3 or 4 acres of just lights and little stations for people to stop out, and they have like a carousel, and stuffed animals on the carousel goes around, and it's just nuts. And I have to imagine like they have to start putting up stuff in like September, because it's so elaborate. And like they don't charge money, but they do sell like little treat bags for kids and stuff like that. And like they ask for donations, and if you're a good person, I would assume they would give a little bit of money, because it is it's like one of those things that, like you were saying, Rob, that nobody else puts up their stuff, because you cannot compete.
Right. So we just do the internal stuff. We have a lot of Christmas decorations, and generally winter decorations. So the Christmas stuff comes down pretty quickly, like anything with Santa Claus and elves and whatever. But then there's a lot of snowmen all over the house that stay up until, you know, the snow stops falling. So we will do that. In fact, this is the first year of not putting up a Christmas tree, just because we got back from vacation with like less than a week to go. So it's like, I don't want to do the work and then take it right down. So, but we are putting up the rest of the stuff. But I have a slightly interesting story. Hope it's interesting about that, the Christmas tree. Was driving my wife's friend and her, I'll say husband, live-in boyfriend. We were going out to double date to dinner, Christmas season, driving past all decorated houses. And she said something like, I don't understand. My friend at work put up a tree and they're not religious. Why would anyone put a Christmas tree up that's not religious? And it was a little weird, because she knows we have a tree, and she probably knows I'm not religious, and she knows her friend is Jewish. So it's like, you just said that to us in our car. Why would you do that? And then I said, well, there's all different beliefs about, and this was, by the way, it was before I knew anything about how to properly talk about these subjects. This was many years ago, before I became an RfR volunteer. I didn't know about street epistemology or anything. But I said, well, people believe certain things and not certain things. But I did know about the thing about that you're not supposed to have a tree in your house if you're Christian. And I gave him that line from the Bible. That's not in there. What are you talking about? It's like, yeah, it is. It says, you know, don't be like a pagan, like Helen, and, you know, put a tree in your house to celebrate Christmas. So the only people who should have trees in their house are not Christians. Sorry.
I love that. I would have loved to have known the pre-RfR Rob without the training. I bet there were some epic smackdowns that happened.
Well, Jehovah's Witnesses came to my door, and my wife said, "You were rude," and I was.
To be fair, like I did laugh because my this was around Halloween, but the people that I work for are very religious people, and they said they don't celebrate Halloween because it's a pagan holiday, but they do celebrate Christmas. And I didn't want to be like, well, I'm like, Christmas is also pagan, but we're gonna ignore that.
As long as you don't have a tree in your house, because you know you're
That's
not
right.
supposed to do that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, we have trees and everything up around the facility and things like that. And it's a little strange because like there's a couple residents that are not religious. We have one that's Jehovah's Witness, and so they don't celebrate anything. And it's always a weird, I don't know if other people have experienced this when like I'm indifferent to, like I do things because they're a tradition and they make me happy. But if like it made somebody in my household unhappy, like weird or weirded out or whatever, I'd be like, okay, we don't have to put up a tree, like whatever. I wonder for other people that, you know, that are either out of religion or they have different faiths and stuff like that, like if it bothers them to see like all the decor and stuff like that, you know, especially since Christmas is like in your face.
Yeah.
Living in the United States.
The Jehovah's Witness thing really, I can kind of make a stretch and understand, don't put your own birthday up there as a thing to celebrate. But the birth of Jesus, you can't celebrate that either? I just don't get that.
Yeah, you know, and I was going to ask y'all about this too. Like, is there, I know on the one hand, we hear every year about, you know, some of the very religious communities complaining that there's a war on Christmas. Every place should be celebrating Christmas and only Christmas. And we don't want to hear happy holidays. We only want to hear about Christmas and nothing else. And it's a big deal if, you know, Starbucks comes out with a red cup that is not Christmassy enough. But what about kind of this other side of it where, what if you're not religious? Or is it like appropriating the holiday somehow to still celebrate aspects of it? Or like you mentioned, should we be worried that it may be offensive to people if we're putting up some of these trimmings and trappings of religious holidays?
Oh, cultural appropriation. Well, that conversation with the same couple at the same time, and I wish I remembered the details, but it somehow deflected into not everyone believes. Well, I guess it was because I mentioned the tree shouldn't be in a Christian's house. And I said, well, there are other doctrines that people like are supposed to believe in and they don't. And one of them said, well, really? What are you talking about? And I said, okay, you're both Catholic, right? You don't believe in transubstantiation, do you? And of course, they didn't know what that word meant. So I had to explain it to them. It meant the literal transformation of the host and the wine into the body and blood. Nobody believes that. I was like, what?
Yes, they do.
Yes, they do.
What?
The priests do. The priests do.
So it went there. I said, ask your priest. He wouldn't believe that. This is how good these people know their own religion.
Wow. Like I have personal friends who are Catholic that absolutely believe that. And they're not even, you know, very like fundamentalist or traditionalist about it. That's just like a tenet.
My mom does. My mom believes in it, you know, and she's not she's more liberal.
I never bought it. 12 years of Catholic school, I always said, oh, that's a metaphor. It was like, you know, so they should have. Oh, by the way, so you may know I have done a weekly series, weekly logical fallacy of the week. Mm-hmm. And one of them was the most contentious. I give the name, I give a description of the fallacy, and then I give an example. And the one that was the most contentious was the no true Scotsman fallacy, because as an example, I used two Catholics arguing about transubstantiation. And when I posted this on Facebook, half of the people said, that's ridiculous, nobody believes it, like my friend did. And the other one said, no, that's true. If you don't believe that, you're not a Catholic. And they were arguing with each other strenuously on the subject. No.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I hope that the logical fallacy of that week was supposed to be the no true Scotsman fallacy.
That's what it was, right? That's right.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly
Yay!
right.
We got one.
And that was so contentious, and people were listing the doctrines of the Catholic Church, and that is one of the things, that this is a miracle. And how can you be a Catholic without believing in that miracle? I said, well, they're also supposed to believe in the infallibility of the Pope. And how many Catholics do you think actually don't practice birth control?
So speaking of miracles, I mentioned this, you weren't here for the pre-chat, Rob, but do you know about the Saint Nicholas miracle that there were 3 children that were murdered and put into pickle barrels?
What?
And he miraculously brought them back to life and put them back together. And
no, I have never heard this.
No, yep, Saint Nicholas did that. He is also the patron saint of sailors, that he can make storms cease, and he's done more miracles than Jesus. Like Saint Nicholas has done some shit. And so, but one of the things he did was, there was this, I think it was an innkeeper, but he murdered like 3 boys, and he pickled their bodies to sell them as pork.
Wow.
And then he went in and resurrected those boys and put them back together. So yeah. So
wow.
yeah. So he didn't even he did more than the Lazarus myth for Jesus. Like, he just put 3 boys back together, but they smell like vinegar. So
I did not get this version of St. Nicholas. We did not. Although
I've never seen this on one of those stop motion Christmas cartoons. No.
No, that wasn't part of. Yeah, it's very interesting. Like these ideas of Saint Nicholas and where these myths came from. The tradition of, I learned this all this week, y'all. So this is new to me too, and I just want to share this information because I thought it was really interesting. So, do you know why we get gifts in our stockings during the holidays?
Now, I know the reason that my family gave, which I also know is not actually the historical reason, but the explanation that we had in my family was, of course, that, since Jesus is the reason for the season and baby Jesus was a gift to humanity, we give each other gifts, to replicate that. It really holds up.
But not the fact that the 3 magi or wise men came, 3 kings, whatever it is. I think there's different versions of that. Brought gifts to Jesus. I thought that was the deal.
Well,
I think that was a part of it too, for sure.
So St. Nicholas, he had a couple daughters, and he was very, very poor. It's somebody that he knew had daughters that were very, very poor. And at the time, he wanted these daughters to be married off, because otherwise they would go into prostitution or something like that, but you needed a dowry. So the first daughter, she had taken a stocking to dry by the fire, and he had dropped it's either a golden ball or a bag of gold into the stocking. So he wanted to do it secretly because he didn't want any kind of recognition for it. And then the 2 other daughters, after the following night, saw that their sister had gotten this gold, and they did the same thing, and the money was dropped into the stockings so they could get married, so they wouldn't go into prostitution and things like that as well. So that is one of their traditions about why you put gifts in your stocking, is so you will have a dowry and not become a prostitute.
So somehow this still ended in sex shaming.
Yes, it still ended in sex shaming, and that sex work does not work.
Wow.
But it's just these old traditions. This is the kind of stuff that I like. I love learning about weird shit that people do and why we follow certain traditions every year, because our ancestors had really weird superstitious beliefs, and we just keep following them over and over and over again.
Well, speaking of different kind of Santa myths and whatever, do you guys know about the Dutch thing with the Black Pete's?
Yeah, I feel like I've heard about this, but no, I don't.
We since we go to Aruba occasionally, and that's the part of the Netherlands, well, they broke away from there, but it's still essentially a Dutch. Their Santa Claus is the version from Holland, and it's very different. They have, instead of elves, they have these people in blackface that come around with Santa and do the bad stuff. So yeah, they'll like steal your gifts or put coal in your stockings or whatever. And this has been going on for hundreds of years, and now there is some pushback and controversy on it. Some people want to keep the tradition, other people think it's racist. It's quite interesting.
That is quite interesting. Well, speaking of Santa, I want to bring up a question that Rob brought up earlier in our pre-planning for the meeting, which was recovering from belief in Santa traumatic for you? And at the time you realized Santa was a deception, did you make a connection between this deception and similar religious claims? And Helen, if you want to go first, I have thoughts on this one.
Oh, I wish I had, because I realized that Santa wasn't real because I realized my mom's handwriting was the same as Santa's, and I was like, wait. And my mom also tended to leave the price tags on gifts, and I noticed that some of my gifts were coming from Toys R Us. So I was like, so I put the 2 and 2 together. But it I think that started a little bit of skeptical thinking, but because being Catholic and the belief was so ingrained into my upbringing, that I didn't make the connection that, oh, people can be deceptive and lie to you, and all you got to do is follow some evidence to get to some sort of reality. I didn't make that connection until I got much older. But even as I got older, I kind of I know that seed was planted at that time, to be a little bit skeptical, because I didn't fall for every claim, and I did question some things, and that's a whole weird thing. Not every claim you fall for, hook, line, and sinker. We tend to be selective about the claims that we believe, when there's no evidence. So I think, but I do like to think that, this was the start of it. Side note, my children discovered that Santa and the Easter Bunny and stuff were not real, but what they held on to was the Tooth Fairy, because they got cash. And they knew when they lost their teeth, they got money.
Reasoning.
Motivated reasoning, yeah. So I say that, I always say that they knew that wasn't real, but they were smart.
That's fair. That's fair.
How about the Easter Bunny? Though?
We didn't do the Easter Bunny because I didn't in the pagan tradition, we had egg hunts and stuff, but we didn't relate it to Jesus rising from the dead, because that we just called them zombie Jesus. So, but we did do egg hunts and stuff like that because it's springtime and fertility, and that's part of the pagan tradition and stuff like that. But they're just symbols of fertility, like eggs and chicks and bunnies and things like that. But we were it's just symbols of fertility and springtime and new life coming into the world, but we didn't do any sort of spiritual connections and things like that. And kids they like egg hunts, they like getting chocolate and dollar bills and doing something fun. So, and not have any it's just a fun thing to do, all this type of stuff for if you don't want to do Santa, but if you want to give gifts to your kids and do stockings and all that type of stuff. I think that, let kids have a childhood, do fun things, but you don't have to attach any sort of supernatural shit to it.
I remember having issues with the physics of Santa Claus.
Oh my God, I did too. Your brain starts going.
Well, I didn't know about the speed of light as, a limit and all that kind of stuff. So that, how do they get around the planet? But the thing that bothered me was we did not have a chimney. We lived in a house with a oil furnace, I think. And there was a little tiny thing, which is probably 6 inches in diameter, that went from the furnace up and opened up. And my father told me, I remember saying, well, Santa has a thing they don't talk about a lot. He can miniaturize himself, and he comes down that little flue. It's like, oh, okay. What the?
We had a brick chimney in our living room, but I knew my dad had closed that up because there was a rat issue. But we had another metal chimney in our living room, and the opening was like this big, and that was the explanation I got, that because Santa is magic, he could shrink himself
Magic
down.
takes care of a lot in religion
Like,
too, right?
But
How
but
did that happen?
but I did remember, I learned about how I didn't understand, because I like distance and time was becoming a thing when I was like 6-7 years old. Like, how do you fly the whole earth? Because we did the diorama. This was right around the time I learned about the solar system, and I made a diorama of the earth and stuff like that. And I was trying to figure out like how Santa visited every house for all the children and left gifts in one night. Like when I was like 7 years old, I'm trying to and that was the beginning of me starting to realize that maybe Santa isn't real. And then I made the connection with my mom's gifts, and that Santa had the same handwriting. It was all within that time period.
I think this is when I learned about time zones, because I'm pretty sure one of their explanations for how can he all do it by midnight? Well, because it's midnight an hour later each time zone, so he's got a lot of time. Oh,
yeah, that makes it plenty of time. 1 extra hour, that's all it takes for the whole time zone.
But so many years after that, I don't remember exactly, but I think it was like I expressed something about Santa Claus in front of older kids, and oh, you're stupid, you still believe in that, right? Oh, you don't? And then they start laughing at you. Oh, I've been fooled. Not everybody believes in this, right? And so, I mean, that's the difference from coming out of a religion, though, because if you decide you don't believe in it, you're the odd person, right? Because everyone else, no, it is true. What's wrong with you? So, right, if everybody really believed in Santa Claus, then you would still believe in Santa Claus as an adult.
I mean, that's a new argument.
No matter what the magic you had to believe in or what, because everyone else believes it and knows it's true. So how could you say it's not true?
Well, that's a new argument on the war on Christmas, the war that's not a war, that all people are getting up in arms because now, like, secular parents, like, millennials and Gen Z, they're having kids. They're like, yeah, we're not going to teach our kids about Santa and all the, people that think there's a war on Christmas. This is a very lame war, by the way. Like, it's stupid. Don't like it. That they're mad because families are now telling their children the Santa isn't real. This is about a season of giving and connecting with family and friends. And what I like to think about the holidays, like being giving and kind and connecting with the people that you love and care about. They're mad because they're not telling their children to believe in a supernatural elf that can shrink himself down if it is your little tiny chimney. What do you do? Because like I live in Florida, we don't have chimneys, so I don't know how Santa would get in my house but side note, I'm just saying that they're all now like, butthurt because parents are not telling their kids bullshit. And I'm just like, yeah, that's a good thing.
Yeah. And see, I remember my family kind of taking the opposite track on that, which I think was not super popular, but this may have been a thing that was big in the fundamentalist evangelical community of the 1980s and early 90s. I don't know. But we didn't have Santa because like my family actually did make the connection between, well, what if your kids figure out that Santa's not real and then they don't believe any of the other magical stuff that you lied to them about? Now, they didn't phrase it that way in terms of the other magical stuff you lied to them about, but it was explicitly stated that, well, we don't want to tell you about some magical being that exists, and then you find out that that's not true, and then you'll question your faith about God too. which is really interesting to me that someone had that full thought process and then didn't arrive at, but I wonder if the story about God is really true. Get there.
For those of you that know what I'm talking about, Chick tracts, there is a Chick tract expressing this issue where there's a little boy in the Chick tract, and his parents are telling them like Santa's real and the Easter Bunny is real, and then as he gets older, he finds out that his parents lied to him, and then also that he doesn't think Jesus is real, and then he turns into a life of crime and becomes a murderer. Like it goes into like this really extreme example, which is awesome. And he's like, and there he turned out that way because his parents wanted him to have a kind of cool childhood. But the thing is though, like we tend to grow out of Santa like around 8 years old. He continued on until like his parents were like, maybe we should tell him that these things aren't real. And then he's like, well, then Jesus isn't real. And then he turns into a criminal and a murderer, which I was like, oh, okay. So it's really, really, really funny. So if all of you, for those of you that don't know what Chick tracts are, I did not find out about them until after I left religion, because Catholics don't have Chick tracts. Okay. They're little
them at my church.
Yeah, they're little comic books. And I use that term loosely, comic pamphlets, I should say, that teach, I'll tell you how bad like Catholics are, Jews are, anyone that is not like a evangelical Christian, and give you and wants you to turn to Jesus. And they're poor. The art is fine, but people, they'll drop them out like, you know, in bathroom stalls or at gas stations, or leave them on the windshields of cars so you can find your way to Jesus.
And Chick is somebody's name, right?
Yeah, Jack Chick. He died, I think, like 4 or 5 years ago, but they're still in publication. So, and he also wrote some problematic ones that aren't in circulation because they're very bad.
Yes. Oh, I love, we're seeing some video of some of these.
Yeah.
Right now. Yep. Yeah, we had these all the time at my church. And I think they had, I think it was Chick tracts. I could be making this up, but didn't they have one about Dungeons and Dragons and how?
Oh yeah, there's a mini movie that you have to see. There's a movie that somebody made on Kickstarter that Chick tract gave money to, but it's obviously making fun of that particular Chick tract of Dungeons and Dragons. And there's some lesbian subtext in it too. It is wonderful. It's so good. Like LARPing is going to turn you into like the most powerful wizard. It's great.
I mean, if the makers of the tracks truly believe in magic, then is it such a leap that they would be afraid that, you know, fantasy, you know, comics and games magic might actually be real and have powers? I don't know.
I just love it that like Jack Chick's company funded the Kickstarter, and they were completely making fun of how ridiculous playing Dungeons and Dragons was going to turn you into an occultist. Like it was so great. I was like, yeah. I love the irony. It makes me happy.
Outstanding. Okay, so on that, kind of moving, you know, from that to the whole, you know, learning Santa might not be real, which, spoiler alert, sorry, we should have given a trigger warning, you know, in case anybody was coming on that hadn't thought about
we're dashing our dreams. Sorry, everybody.
Sorry if you kids were here.
Get a new dream.
By the way, am I the ultimate Grinch if I ever write an article slamming the answer to about Virginia and Santa Claus? Because I read that a few years ago, and I was appalled at the intent of that. Basically,
wait, I haven't read it in so long, so I don't remember.
From a skeptical point of view, it's teaching a kid not to be skeptical about anything, to just believe it. It's like, oh, this is so bad.
Yeah, you know, that bugged me even as a kid when we would watch those, you know, just feel good family holiday movies, you know, Miracle on 34th Street and all that. And it's like the moral of the story was that the kid was too smart and that was bad.
Yeah, yeah.
And that bugged me even as a kid. So I was like, but Santa's not actually real. Wait a minute.
To be fair, in that movie, Santa does show up and proves to the little girl that he's real, and he has to go to court, and there's like he's in court and there's mail and there's evidence. So
yeah, in that
so
universe,
that's I
real.
can see it from the skeptic's point of view that it was actually proven that Santa Claus was real because evidence had to be presented in a court of law, and he actually existed, and he proved to the little girl that he was real. So I think that's fine. I don't believe in, and that is a good way to teach skepticism, to say like there better be evidence that this is real.
So here's the
so that's my perception on
here's
that.
the second to last paragraph. I just Googled it.
Okay.
Of Yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus. You may tear apart the baby's rattle and see what makes the noise inside, but there is a veil covering the unseen world, which not the strongest man, nor even the united strength of all the strongest men that ever lived could tear apart. Only faith, fancy, poetry, love, romance can push aside the curtain and view and picture the supernal beauty and glory beyond. Is it real? Ah, Virginia, in all the world there is nothing else real and abiding. It's like, oof.
That's different than Miracle on 34th Street.
Yeah.
Like,
I still remain unconvinced of Miracle on 34th Street personally.
I'm not saying but I just thought, like, from a skeptic's point of view, it was actually a little bit more like
No, I'm not talking about the movie. I'm talking specifically about the famous letter, Yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Right. There's a line, nobody can conceive or imagine all the wonders that are unseen and unseeable in this world. So it's basically telling you, yes, there is a supernatural realm and you should believe it.
Right. Exactly. Because that's how science works,
Yeah. Remain unconvinced on that one. Which, okay, speaking of which, this leads me to another one of our topics for this evening. One challenge that a lot of people have mentioned that's difficult for them during this season is that if they're celebrating holidays, it's oftentimes with family members who are religious and have supernatural beliefs about the holidays, and this can often devolve into conflict. Do y'all have that problem, and how do you manage it? Do you have any recommendations for dealing with this kind of thing?
Well, I told this story before, not only here but on a podcast. My whole family, Catholic, Italian American, typical, like not extremely religious, and all of my extended family converted to Pentecostal, evangelical, speaking in tongues in one fast summer. And I've had to live with these people, all my uncles and aunts and all my cousins, my whole life. And there was one pair that we were kind of friendly with and maintained relationships, even though, every time we went over their house for either Thanksgiving or Christmas, we'd have to say grace. And, I'd all be talking about what they did at the church. And they knew we weren't religious, but they did it anyway. And it was kind of difficult. I mean, at some point we kind of said, okay, I don't remember how we did this. Might have even written them a letter because it was an awkward conversation to have in person. But it was like, we understand you have this faith, but we don't, and you seem to not care about that. And if we're going to continue to get together, you need to realize that we don't want to talk about the subject all the time. And it actually worked. She apologized, and the next time we got together, I think we still say grace. She said, is it okay if we say grace? I was like, you can say grace. I'm not going to say it. But that was it. So that actually kind of worked.
Wow, I'm impressed. That was a really productive conversation. So you explained.
The other family members, not so. We don't talk to any of the rest of them anymore. It's just at one of the conventions, when I first met Richard Dawkins, I posted a selfie with him, and other skeptics on my site were saying, "Oh, great, Rob! I wish I could talk to him or whatever." And my cousin, my other cousin, wrote, "You and your skeptical friends will not be laughing when Jesus has his boot on your neck in the end times." And that's kind of the gist.
Loving Jesus. It's so loving of him.
Yeah, that's aggressive.
little.
Wow.
Yeah.
Militant Jesus. That's what I think of.
Well, it's the Revelation Jesus, you know,
Yeah,
the
it's
guy coming
Revelation.
back to, yeah.
Yes. He loves you, Rob.
He loves you so much that he's gonna like punch you
Put
in
his
the
boot
face.
on my neck.
Wow. Yeah, that's terrifying. Yeah.
For me, my family, they don't, well, the ones that are on my social media know I'm an atheist because I'm always saying what I'm up to. So, but my parents don't know. And I'm kind of lucky because all my family is doesn't live in the state. So I can do whatever I want. So because we do what we want to do, I don't have to deal with family drama. And I've gone over friends' houses for holidays, like for Thanksgiving. And if they say grace, I just bow my head, because I'm in their home. I'm not going to be like, it's all bullshit, blah, 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 because I don't want to be an asshole. Don't be assholes, people. It's not a good look. So, and if they want to do that, I bow my head and, I'm quiet, but I don't say amen. I don't, participate, and I always make sure I thank people that have like made the meal, instead of thanking God, I always thank them for inviting me over and wanting to celebrate the holiday with
Oh,
me,
that's nice.
instead of, contributing it to, a supernatural being. So I think like, and who's going to argue with you? Like you're thinking, like, thank you for inviting me over. Thank you for making this wonderful meal. Thank you for sharing your day with me. Like who's going to argue with that? Like, so, that type of stuff. I would have to imagine though, like if you are this person that has to go to like your parents' house and they are very religious and you are either recovering from religion or you've been out for a while and you even might get triggered by religious talking points, you are dealing with, and you might have religious trauma syndrome or, and things that you're dealing with. You have to kind of figure out how you want to deal with it, because obviously we are not in your family. We do not know the dynamics. We don't know, how you deal with things. But if you're okay going over and having dinner with your family and exchanging gifts and, all that type of stuff, great. But if like your family, like if you're Catholic and your family invites you to midnight mass and you don't want to go, you have to decide how you want to handle that and what the conversation that you're going to have. I do recommend being gentle as possible and not be aggressive, because that's not going to get you anywhere. And you can politely decline and say like, I won't go to midnight mass, but I'll definitely be over for Christmas dinner or whatever it is. You have to kind of figure out what that balance is on your own. Or if your family is so aggressive about it or it makes you deeply uncomfortable, you can choose not to spend the holiday with them. It's going to be hard and difficult, but you have to take care of yourself first and find out what your comfort level is. And if your comfort level is so disquieting, that it's going to cause a lot of issues for you, you can choose to opt out. And that's hard. And I'm not saying it is, but you have to take care of yourself first, and you got to figure out what that dynamic is and what your limits are.
Yeah, for sure. And, we have had, a couple of we've now been doing RfRx so long that we have 2 previous holiday episodes to refer back to. And
oh yeah, David did one, right?
yeah. David did one and Casey did one, celebrating the holidays as a non-believer, and then the non-believer's holiday survival guide. I'll drop those in the chat.
We do have resources on the resource site on our resource page too. So that we have information on there that will help you kind of navigate this time of year as well.
Yeah. But yeah, setting boundaries seems to be that theme that comes up consistently. Yep. You don't have to just get, carried along and dragged into these things if they're going to be, completely uncomfortable and offensive and upsetting for you. It's okay if you don't participate. So
just yesterday I had one of those situations. It wasn't family, but we do square dancing, and there was a Christmas dinner potluck, and we went, and 20-ish people there, maybe. And as you know, they say, okay, the food's available, go sit, take the food, whatever. And then the person gets up and does Jesus loves you all, and I want to thank Jesus for all this food, and da, 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 da. She's the president of the club. It's like, I'm going to say, it's like very, very awkward. As one of the people there is the Wiccan I was mentioning before. There's my wife is Jewish. There's other people besides me who aren't Christian. It's like, why do they do this? And just think it's fine.
Yeah, the hubris, the arrogance to just assume that whatever belief that you have is the same one that everyone will want to have foisted upon them.
Yep.
Yeah, like I make a point to say, like, when I hear Merry Christmas, I'm like, Happy Holidays. And I like, because I don't know what people celebrate, or if they don't celebrate at all. Like I say, I hope you have a good holiday, however that looks like for you. Like, that's what I say, because I don't know what that looks like for you. And you might be like, Hanukkah started last night. I don't know if you're Jewish. I don't know if you're a pagan. I don't know if you're an atheist. You don't celebrate shit. I don't know. And I think it's rude. I think because, for those of us that live in the United States, Christmas is so dominated this time of year. Everybody just assumes everybody else celebrates Christmas. I don't celebrate Christmas. I celebrate Yule. I don't make a big stink about it if someone says Merry Christmas to me, but just to naturally assume it gets very frustrating, because there's so many different, even for those of us that don't follow religion, I want to respect everybody's beliefs because they're not mine. And I don't want to assume what's in somebody else's brain and life. I think that's a bad thing to do.
Right. And I think this very concept is the thing that seems to really set off, people that are worried about this so-called war on Christmas. The war is basically saying, well, there's other holidays too. We don't have to only celebrate Christmas. And that seems to be the thing that people actually end up getting so upset about, is the fact that you're calling into question this idea that, Christmas is the only holiday and everyone either is celebrating it, or if they aren't, they should be celebrating it. So that's just the only holiday we're going to talk about. And that's not a war on Christmas. That's a war on Christmas trying to erase everybody else's holidays or not holidays.
Christmas supremacy or something like.
Yeah, Christmas supremacy. But it is, and I think that's the crux of it. It's, not wanting to accept that there are other cultural practices and other traditions and other belief systems that aren't connected to celebrating Christmas. And sorry, that's not an attack on you. That's just other people existing. Those are two very different things. It's not persecution if other people just exist next to you.
Right. And like, somebody was asking the chat, do we have to respect everybody's beliefs? No, but I respect other people. Like, I can think like, if you are like, 35 years old and you still believe in Santa, I'm not going to respect that very much, but you're a human being and I'm going to be nice to you, even though you believe you got Santa at 35 years old is really fucking ridiculous. So, but
unless it's Miracle on 34th Street.
Unless it's Miracle on 34th Street, because
maybe that's the only Christmas movie that person watched, and they were convinced that
because
Santa was
US
vindicated
Postal
in court.
Service as your Santa Claus, you're Santa Claus.
Like, it is really funny, like these ideas every year of like, because it is a message this time of year of belief. Like you just believe Santa's real. You just believe that Jesus was born this time of year and three magi like followed him, and a virgin had a baby in a manger around some donkeys and
the biggest problem I had, because I was deeply into
and there was a star right above
that's the star. I was into astronomy, and I said stars don't stay over one spot. What the hell are you talking about? That bothered me.
The earth moves. So.
That is a really good point, Rob. That is super problematic, because even at the time that these texts would have been written,
right,
people would have been aware of that.
Right. The earth turns, right, and there's nothing which would stay over your spot. Sorry.
Yeah,
Doesn't
so
work.
like, and
Okay.
I think that's a problematic thing to just like, because I like this time of year about the giving aspect and spending time with friends and family and being appreciative for what you have, and once you let go of all the commercialism shit, like I like for lack of better word, I like the spirit of Christmas, for lack of a better term. But when you're just supposed to believe in like a virgin birth and magi's and angels impregnating a 12-year-old,
And a star
you know
stationary over a spot.
and yeah, star stay stationary and all this kind of things, it's like, okay, now you're stretching it, now you're being kind of silly. So and I think you can have your holidays and be skeptical about them as well. You can do both. I think, but I think also too, when it comes to like the war on Christmas, that not only do they want Christmas supremacy, I'm going to so use that now. Anyway, Christmas supremacy, they also like, well, if you're cynical about Christmas and you don't celebrate it, then where's the magic and where's all the wonder and all that type of stuff? And it's just like, dude, it's a day. You get like, everybody likes free stuff and they want to eat and hang out with their family. I'm like, I can do that on my birthday. So
Yeah, I agree. I love Christmas, actually. I enjoy celebrating the whole holiday season. I mean, not in a particularly religious way. I'm like Rob, I put up a Christmas tree and I have like little dog ornaments all over it because I love animals. And so those are my Christmas tree decorations. But like, I love all of it. The smell of cinnamon and, listening to holiday music and making mulled wine and planning a big feast to cook. And I mean, it's fun
yeah.
watching Die Hard. I mean, I love celebrating the holiday, and it's not in a religious way at all. And I think that that's fine. I think we can do that. And we don't need to be getting mad at people about what way they celebrate the holiday. But yeah, this idea that like, oh, you're a Grinch, basically, if you don't have these, magical beliefs about Christmas. Well, I don't know. Why can't I have a really enjoyable time, enjoying the company of other people that I care about and, enjoying the weather that happens this time of year and giving gifts and being generous and indulging in, delicious foods and drinks that are special to this time of year and experiencing nostalgic things. Like, how is that not getting to experience the quote unquote, magical Christmas season? I mean, it's not magical in a supernatural sense, but I think it ticks the rest of the boxes.
And but I think also too that when you leave religion and you have this ingrainment in you that like the reason why we celebrate Christmas because Jesus is the reason for the season, and and everything that's tied up into that, and it takes a while for your brain and everything to get adjusted and go, like, you don't have to celebrate Christmas. You can say, fuck Christmas. I'm just going to take the day off from work and watch Die
That
Hard
sounds like a
and eat
t-shirt logo.
tacos.
Fuck Christmas,
Yeah.
I just want to take a day off from work. I'm going to make a
You're
t-shirt.
right, exactly.
Yes,
Like,
I will buy
fine.
that t-shirt, Rob.
Like,
Send
that's
us the
fine.
link.
You can do that too, but I can understand that people that have left religion, because like when I didn't have so much of a struggle with this, but I definitely had this kind of feeling like, should I be doing this because it has religious context and religion attached to it? And I find religion very, 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 very problematic. And I have a lot of issues with it. And I think that can be hard for people to feel that cognitive dissonance and wonder if they can celebrate, like, well, can I still like, or if you love Christmas and you tied it up in your Jesus myth and then you let go of the, virgin birth baby, that's going to become a zombie in 3 months, but whatever. Like, if you're going to let that go, like, how do you reconcile those things? And I think those are questions that people really struggle with this time of year when they leave religion, because they want to have all the things they love about the holiday, and can they still have those feelings when they let those things go? And I definitely struggled with that question myself as I was letting go of certain beliefs and things like that. Like when I left paganism, I didn't really want to stop celebrating Yule and do my Holly King and Oak King battle, even though I don't believe in like gods anymore. And then I was just like, no, and I'm like, and I'm going to have a Cthulhu miss, and I'm going to celebrate. Yeah, it was fun. That was a really fun ritual. That was a fun holiday. My friend got me, I have a yarn Cthulhu mask. It's in my living room. Okay, when Rob after I talk about this, I'm gonna go grab it and put it on. Anyway, but you can do things like that during the holidays and just make it yours and not worry about all the religion bullshit that came along with it.
100% agree. Other people don't own your joy and your cheer and your personal traditions that you like to do. I mean, let's be real. We've talked about this before on here, but the whole idea of a Christmas tree and all of these Christmas traditions that we celebrate, if we're religious, those were taken from earlier pagan holidays and other holidays that were not Christian. So, by the logic that says we can't celebrate those things if we're not religious anymore, well, I guess Christians shouldn't be using those symbols and ways of celebrating either, since they existed prior to that belief system too. So
Seth Andrews did a really nice video on the origins of all the Christmas traditions. If anybody has the time and wants to Google, put that in the link for other people, that'd be great.
Yes, I'm going to look for that now. That sounds amazing. But yeah, I mean, I think that's silly to say we're not allowed to enjoy things that we enjoy. No, who said that? Who's going to stop you? That's ridiculous. Enjoy what you enjoy. Well, and okay, on that note, we've kind of gone on to that. We talked a little bit about praying over the meals and things like that and having the religious conversations with family members. I'm wondering what other challenges that y'all might enjoy. Oh my goodness, Helen, that is the best thing ever.
I love his name. My friend got it for me because I'm a huge H.P. Lovecraft fan and Cthulhu, and my friend got this for me for Christmas one year. So I wear it for my Cthulhu miss Christmas.
Excellent. I am expecting now to see this.
Mask.
Yes, every year we need to see you in this, Helen.
Okay, I'm gonna wear it. It does get really hot, but I will wear it every year. So I can honor Zoidberg and our god Cthulhu.
This reminds me of the TikTok video with the meme. If I wore this to a date, what would you do?
Yes, it is crocheted. It is crocheted. But I bought it from a seller on Etsy. My friend found it on Etsy from a seller that sent me the link, and they do a bunch of different colors. But I did red because it's holiday.
I love that.
Yeah. So.
Okay. So
anyway, sorry. I had to share because I don't get to wear this very much. So happy holidays, everybody. Have happy Cthulhu-mas.
Yes. When you told me ahead of the show that you didn't have very much festive,
I do. Now
things you could wear, you were lying.
I did. I lied. Yes. Cthulhu is the reason for the season. May he rest in his dark slumber and not destroy the world.
Outstanding. Okay, so that brings me to a question that I wanted to ask y'all about. We've talked about some of the challenging things about this time of year and some of the religious connections that are, sometimes difficult if you're recovering from religion or deconstructing or have been for a while. But is there anything about this time of year that you actually enjoy more as a secular person? Things that you can do now that you couldn't before, or ways that you can celebrate it that you couldn't previously that are more fun or enjoyable?
I mean, I find Yule way more fun than regular Christmas, because of my group of friends and the way that we do things. Because like I said, I make my own holiday, and I do my own rituals and I do my own thing because it's fun. Like we did one year, we did a Harry Potter Christmas and we all dressed up as characters from Harry Potter and did it that way. It's just a matter of, hey, this is a holiday. It's supposed to be fun. Do whatever you want. It's fine. Or if you don't want to do anything, that's okay too. Nobody's going to judge you except for me. No, just Cthulhu will judge you. So
that's fair. Yeah, I enjoy that too. And this is not everyone's experience, but In my family, in our religious traditions, alcohol is not allowed, and so that kind of eliminates your
Oh,
ability to enjoy those things
no
like
spiked eggnog.
Ah,
Ooh.
exactly. There's no eggnog, there's no mulled wine, and not that
yeah,
you need alcohol to celebrate a holiday, but
you
it's
don't?
kind of
You
nice.
don't?
I mean, I like to, but it's nice to be able to celebrate things the way you want to without having to feel guilty about whether it fits into this very strict system of rules that are arbitrarily imposed upon you. Now I feel like I can just enjoy doing whatever I want during the holidays. And
The
that's
thing, the
great.
thing I don't actually miss is going to mass, because even when my family wasn't extremely religious, even though I was sent to Catholic school, but you had to go on Easter and Christmas, and so yeah, it's like the two days that they forced me to go to mass. One of them was Christmas, and I despised sitting there, especially as I was believing less and less of it to sit through everything. It's like, oh.
I was Mary in a school pageant during
What?
when I was a kid. Yeah, because I was in Catholic school and we did a pageant of the birth of Jesus.
Did you
And,
reflect the reality? Were you 12 years old at the time?
no, I was younger, and it wasn't a 60-year-old man. That was my husband. So
Ah,
yeah,
ah.
so it wasn't reality. Sorry, but what I don't remember. I remember two things that I was really uncomfortable, and the veil I was wearing was super itchy, and and every time I would scratch it, my teacher wouldn't let me scratch my head because it was ruining the play. Like I'm like, I'm 7. I'm wearing this itchy veil that's around my head because what they did is like you wear the veil, and then there was like a band around my head made wrapped in like that sparkly tinsel stuff, and it itched my forehead so bad in the back of my head, and I had to wear it for like an hour, and I just didn't want, and I was supposed to be merry and very solemn, and like and I'm like this, like like I had a baby. I had the savior. I'm 6. I'm 6 years old.
Yeah,
So
I actually always hear complaints about how young Muhammad's wife was, but I never hear this about Mary.
12 years old, and some biblical sources married to somebody in their 60s.
Like, wow,
Yeah. Problematic in a
wow.
lot of
So
ways, and criminal.
if the thing is to slam Muhammad for marrying somebody that young, why is God off the hook then? Hmm.
Right. And can we also just reflect on the fact that Mary did not agree in advance to this
No, an
happening?
Hmm.
angel showed up and said, hey, you're going to give birth to the savior.
So,
Okay.
so is that how you agree to it? By just hearing the angel say you're going to give birth to I don't know.
I don't think that constitutes consent.
Yeah.
Like,
Not in my book, anyway.
what would you do if a angel came down? I'm asking Rob this too. Like, we'll just say that nature isn't a thing. You can get pregnant.
Like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Just the Immaculate Conception
It's
is,
immaculate
very
conception.
realistic.
Yeah.
It's just a slightly more magical thing. Yes, that can happen.
Yeah, slightly more magical. But what do you do? Do you say like no angel?
No.
Yeah, I mean, I
Sorry,
would.
sorry, bud.
But like you're 12. You're a 12-year-old girl. You're a 12-year-old. They'd be like, hey, you're gonna give birth to the savior.
Wait. So explain. I haven't had the birds and the bees talk yet. Explain to me what is it? How do I give birth to the savior?
I feel like that conversation may also have not occurred in this hypothetical story.
This is what I'm
I
saying.
wonder
So like,
if
all right, wait, I'm going to give birth, but what happens before that? How do I get pregnant? Tell me this.
like is it like angel rape?
Yeah.
Kind of, because like she's like a 12-year-old can't I'm thinking way
Well,
too
not
much.
angels, Holy Spirit, right? Holy Spirit, right?
Spirit, the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
And the thing is though, it's just like Adam, like God created man and woman out of dirt. Like, why do you need to impregnate a 12-year-old? Like, why do you need a virgin birth? Okay, I'm not talking about that this is based on like an Egyptian myth with Osiris and stuff like that. I'm just talking about logistics.
Well,
Like,
because there were all these other virgin births around the same time, so God couldn't be shown up.
That's right. But like, don't you think it would be more impressive if he like made Jesus out
Yeah.
of like an actual rib, and he's like, look,
13-year-old
see,
old just pops into existence.
yeah,
Yes.
like look what I did.
That would have been more impressive, definitely.
Like, he is the god of diminishing returns,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
I often wonder, like, if the story were true, right? Did Joseph buy this? Yes, seriously? Wait, you're pregnant because of what? What, Mary?
Oh yeah,
Not that neighbor who's always looking at you and you kind of like, just a
Do you
God came
think
and did
that the
it?
lie just got a little bit too far, and he was
Yeah.
just like, okay, fine?
well, and like in the version I remember, it was that Joseph didn't believe her at first, but then later the angel had to appear to him and
Wait,
then
is that
convince
biblical?
him.
I don't remember that.
It's in one part of the gospel. I can't remember which of the gospels it's in, but it's in one of the versions. Maybe it's in Matthew. I can't remember. But the angel convinces him that, oh no, she's actually not lying.
Oh yeah, I do remember that version. I can't, but it is one of the gospels.
But also, my question is,
It just
okay,
seems like a post hoc explanation that
Yeah,
they
yeah, yeah,
added
yeah.
that
That's what I'm
in.
saying.
Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
okay, like,
Right. Yeah, the story's
like,
got a
it's
plot
weird.
hole in it. We need to fix this
We
plot
need to
hole.
fill the
All right,
plot
have the
hole.
angel appear to Joseph and explain it to him.
right. And like also this whole story, whenever people are like talking about, well, what's more likely that, that it was this, virgin birth or that, she cheated. And I'm like, yeah, I agree. But also, why does nobody assume that just she and Joseph weren't hooking up and like they both knew and she was pregnant? Like, why is Joseph off the hook here? I mean, could it just be that, as with many young couples, oopsie, we're pregnant?
And isn't there some contradiction in the Gospels regarding the
Are you saying there's
lineage?
contradictions in the Bible?
Well, we're talking about a specific one here. The
Okay.
lineage of Jesus back, one traces it back through Mary, which would make sense, but then there's another one that traces it back through Joseph, which would make no sense in this context. Am I imagining this? I seem to remember this.
I do too, and I could not pinpoint
There's a lineage for
exactly,
Joseph.
but yes.
Yeah, it's tracing Jesus' lineage
Now I
back. I
gotta look
think
it
it's
up now.
David, but it goes back through Joseph, and Joseph's father wasn't Joseph's grandfather. It's like, why would you do that?
Because
Okay,
that's the way lineage was traced in
somebody
that
put
society.
Matthew 1:18-25.
It has to be traced through the father because
Joseph.
women's
But the story is he's not the father.
It's in Matthew.
So.
It's
minor
in Matthew.
detail.
It's in Matthew that the lineage of Jesus comes from Joseph and Matthew.
That's
Because
bizarre.
Joseph descended from David through his son Solomon.
That's bizarre.
So what I'm hearing is facts are not really the important part of this story.
So, well, wasn't there like an argument, like there was a thing with the Shroud of Turin that they did DNA on it? Well, I'm not saying this is scientific accurate. It might be, and I'm pretty sure this is bullshit. That they found the maternal DNA on the cloud of Turin, but they couldn't find the paternal, so that through proves that the cloud of Turin was real, the shroud was real, and Jesus existed.
I was speaking on a skeptical topic at a humanist convention, and somebody came up to me arguing that the shroud was real because the scientific tests were inaccurate. And I didn't quite get that. But then we talked a little bit more, and he defined himself as a Christian humanist. I had never heard of that combination of words together before.
Huh? What?
Yeah, that's what I did. Like, what?
What?
I mean, isn't that contradictory to like some of the basic tenets, like, this principle of original sin and, people are inherently.
So. I didn't get to explore it with him, but I thought that, yeah, I don't get it. In fact, the meeting, like slightly after that, and I was about to speak, the meeting was called to order, and the person running the meeting did what they do all the time, is they said, as humanists, we do not believe morality comes from ancient books and stuff and supernatural entities, which we didn't believe exist. And I'm looking at the guy, how are you a humanist? I don't get that you're agreeing to this. And you believe the Shroud of Turin was a real thing. It's like,
so does he think that like God is real, but
I don't know. I really wish I had done it.
Because I'm like wondering if like he thinks humans make morality, but God exists, which
I don't know. But
I don't know.
the
It's very
thing
confusing.
of interest was the Shroud of Turin, because I actually have
Yeah.
worked on the Wikipedia article and
Mhm.
added information from people who have done the analysis of the Shroud
Yeah.
and had gone through this, and how can an image like that be made. So I don't know what you were talking about, Helen, with the DNA, but
There was,
yeah,
I heard
yeah, I
it
hear what you're
through
saying. I
some
just hadn't
bullshit.
heard this before. But
Yeah.
I had heard that, they did figure out how they could have made an image that looks like that, which actually, that's not the kind of image that would come if it was actually wrapped around the body and the
Right.
image was made by radiation of some sort.
Like, I don't remember. It's one of those myths, bullshit things you hear from other Christians and stuff like that. But I think I saw a documentary, quote unquote, on it. That was one of the tests that was supposedly done, which was debunked, obviously, because that doesn't happen. So, and like we all know that, like, because of carbon dating is not as old as they claim it is, and
Yeah.
all these different things.
Well, that's
So
what the guy was arguing, that they took the wrong piece off it. It was a repair piece, and therefore it doesn't matter what the test showed. It was already with. Anyway.
Yeah, sounds like after the fact reasoning.
Post
So,
hoc, always
yes.
post hocs.
Oh, yes. So with all of this in mind, as we wrap up and get ready to go to Q&A, do y'all have any resources to recommend to people for surviving this holiday season, whether it's some Wikipedia articles that they can pull out if they need to, or some tips for managing interactions, or favorite secular holiday playlists, or anything like that?
I would recommend as a holiday playlist the Chipmunks Christmas album, because that's what I always play when we're opening gifts. Don't ask me why, but we do it.
But it's a whole album. It's not just one song.
Oh no! In fact, I have two albums. I think there's a combination. Maybe it's something like 15 songs, something like that, on the two albums. Yeah.
Oh wow!
I don't like Christmas music, so I don't listen to it, because I worked in retail for a number of years. So
I worked at a
it's,
Baskin Robbins at a mall.
it's like,
you.
even like I had to
I
run a
feel
couple
you.
of errands after work, and the fact that I have to listen to Christmas music when I
Why
walk
does
in
it
the
have to
stores.
start before Thanksgiving? Stop it.
Oh my God! Like I'm like Halloween just ended. Stop.
So yeah, and as you mentioned before, I think Kara, you said it, the previous RfR X videos that were done on the holiday season, I think, are really good recommendations.
Yes, I'm going to drop those links in there again too. Yeah, and we have also a sort of holidays set of resources on our resources page as well, which I will also drop. And don't forget, we have support groups, and they are meeting over the holidays. And I think some of them are having some extra like holiday meetings over the next few weeks. So check the support group calendar.
Let me read these off, by the way, for people who watch this video later. All right.
Yes.
So you can Google it without, I won't give you the long URL, but you can Google it on YouTube. It says RfRx, a non-believer's holiday survival guide with David Teachout. You should be able to find it that way. And the other one is RfRx, celebrating the holidays as a non-believer with Case, K-A-C-E, Hodos, H-O-D-O-S.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, those are our previous two episodes with additional tools and resources and ideas. So you can always, watch those and enjoy the holidays that way while listening to your Chipmunks albums, of which there are apparently at least two entire albums.
I think that another thing you can do is, like, if you love your, like, the old Baskin Ross, like Christmas specials, like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, I can't remember the name of the elf that wanted to be a dentist, but I love him.
Hermie.
Hermie was the best. Like, he was a little gay boy that wanted to be a dentist. Like, I love Hermie. He's queer in my brain. Is canon.
Oh yeah, Helen, didn't you recently receive a new fun party game?
Yeah. So It's not mine. This is a gift from my gay husband, my gay best friend. It is a Cards Against Humanity game called the Queer Agenda, because we are trying to dominate the world. So, you know, this is how we get recruits.
I've been wondering what the agenda was for years.
Know, but now
I didn't know. Like, I thought I had missed the meetings or something. I don't know.
I keep missing the pamphlets. Like, I keep like the mail out hasn't come.
That's great.
That's great. Hermie, that makes me so happy. So,
I have Hermie and Rudolph and Clarice. Clarice.
That's awesome. So yeah, like, but y'all, like, get yourself like a party game. Drink some spiked eggnog or whatever, like cranberry, like, you know, non-alcoholic booze for drinks. Non-alcoholic booze. Okay, non-alcoholic.
Yes, Helen. Non-alcoholic booze, my favorite Christmas tradition.
Exactly.
I drink it from a coffee mug.
Yeah, exactly.
No, this is coffee. It's 10 p.m. Don't worry about it.
So get your non-alcoholic booze.
Specifically for Amy and any other Jews here, it's Christmas time for the Jews from Saturday Night Live.
And don't forget to watch the Die Hard movies if you enjoy action movies.
Wait, movies, are they all Christmas themed? All of them?
The first one is the most Christmas themed. The second one also takes place on Christmas, although that is less of an important part of the plot. It's in an airport. And the third one is nothing to do with Christmas, and the ones after that are just, you know, completely different and off the rails, yes. But also, I don't know if I mentioned to y'all, like, part of my holiday tradition is dressing up like characters from Die Hard. And that's my costume tonight. I'm wearing the Santa hat and the gray sweatshirt that says, okay, trigger warning, it's going to reference weapons because this is an action movie, but it says, now I have a machine gun, ho, 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 from the part in the...
Is that a line in the movie?
It is. Well, Bruce Willis, you know, has an encounter with one of the bad guys and he kills him, and he writes in a red Sharpie on his gray sweatshirt, now I have a machine gun, ho, 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 and sends him down the elevator. And so that's
okay.
the pure
so if we're showing Christmas
costume.
shirts, I did mention that I do Star Wars movies when they're released on Christmas, so that's what I'm wearing. Star Wars.
Awesome. I also recommend that if you are you should watch your Doctor Who Christmas special every year, because
hard to find.
Yeah. Well, and, okay, did they go to doing New Year's specials now, or have they gone back to Christmas specials again?
I haven't watched the new season yet. I'm only halfway through Capaldi because I'm catching up, man. So.
The other thing that has not been mentioned, and I watched this every year as a child, and I have not watched it in 30 years, and I just found it streaming somewhere, and I watched about half of it yesterday, was the Laurel and Hardy Babes in Toyland, also known as March of the Wooden Soldiers. Who else knows about that?
I saw that.
Amy does. Amy knows about it.
I watched it a couple times when I babysat as a teenager on VHS, and I have vague visions of it.
It's very corny intentionally. Yes. But the really weird thing to me is this didn't strike me when I was a child watching it. Laurel, Stan, I forget who's who, the heavier one, has a Hitler mustache. Nobody wears a mustache like this, but it was like in 1933 it was filmed, so you know.
Oh, okay, well that makes sense.
It wasn't a Hitler mustache yet.
That's right, that's correct. In fact, maybe he gave the idea to Hitler to wear his mustache like that. I want to look this up.
Was it okay? Am I imagining this, or was it that like Charlie Chaplin was supposedly the inspiration for why Hitler did that mustache?
Yeah, I thought that was too.
Well, no, he was in a movie called The Dictator, I think, making fun of Hitler.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. I can't remember, but that's a good question, Rob. I expect to see an updated Wikipedia about this. Obviously, that facial hairstyle has gone out of fashion.
It's probably the fashion at the time, and then after, you know, Hitler did all the bad, people were like, yeah, this isn't a look we want to replicate.
Yeah. No. And yes, Nikki just asked, was that a Laurel and Hardy movie? Yes, it was.
I remember watching those. That is one of my, like, feel good nostalgic childhood memories, is those Laurel and Hardy movies. Those are fun. I
I got
love
to
that.
tell you though, some of it doesn't hold up watching it as an adult. Especially, most of the characters are human, but the three little pigs are like, short people in pig costumes, and they're it's like, oh, it's
I don't
spooky.
think I was seen any
It's
Laurel and
spooky.
Hardy. Maybe I
And
did.
the old woman who lived in a shoe, she had so many children she didn't have to do. It's like 20 children come out of her house, and Laurel and Hardy are the two biggest ones. They're all of her kids. It's like, oh god.
That sounds terrible.
So yeah, watch your corny movies during this time of year. Drink your non-alcoholic booze.
And the thing that makes that movie about people, what does it have to do with Christmas? Well, they live in Toyland where they make the toys for Santa, basically. That's what it's about.
Okay, so there's a loose connection there.
It's stronger than Die Hard.
Oh, I disagree. Die Hard
They're
is
making toys for
through
Santa.
and through a Christmas film.
Listen, if Home Alone can be a Christmas movie about a 10-year-old psychopath, then Die Hard can be a holiday movie, because Kevin McAllister grew up to be a serial killer.
Yeah, in fact,
he was the original Saw guy.
We need to see the poll results of what people thought about whether Die Hard is a Christmas movie, and then I promise we're going to wrap up, but I'm going to share the results. Okay, survey says, first of all, I'll read all of them. How do you feel about the end of year holiday season? 26% said it's my favorite time of year, bring it on. 30% said it's okay. 17% are indifferent. Nobody answered it's not a big deal in my community. And 26% of people would rather poke themselves in the eye than hear one more holiday song on repeat, which I feel you.
I feel you on that.
Yeah. Do you have to be religious to celebrate religious holidays? 13% said yes, 70% said no, and 17% were not sure. And now the most important question, is Die Hard a Christmas movie? 22% said yes, obviously. A close 17% said no. 52% have no opinion on this matter, and 9% selected an accidental blank option that I included for some reason. If you selected that, I want you to explain your answer in the chat, please. So we have a bit of a split decision on this one, I suppose.
9% are like,
9% really did not care for this question, I guess. All right, then. Well, moving on to wrap up this evening. This has been a lot of fun, and we are definitely going to have the Hangout right after this. But before we do, Helen, did you have one more podcast recommendation you want to share with us?
Yes. So I am now a co-host on Let the Valley, and yesterday we did our annual Christmas episode, and we got an amateur historian on, talk about all the traditions of Christmas and where they came from. So if you want to learn about how St. Nicholas brought 3 pickled children back to life and all the weird traditions that we have, please check out that episode. So that is another resource for you. You can learn all about like weird holiday traditions and where they came from and stuff like that. It's a good time.
Excellent, thank you. And we have just a couple of minutes left for questions, which we only have a few questions, so that's perfect. And then if we don't get to all of them, ask them in the Hangout. So first question was a follow-up question for Rob. Someone is wondering about your story from the very beginning. Did those friends that you talked to about transubstantiation ever go back and ask their priest about it and report back?
I have never pushed the issue or brought it up again, and neither have they. So I don't know. I would put a lot of money down on no, they never brought it up with the priest.
Yeah, that makes sense.
What I neglected to say was being a pain in the ass, because they didn't believe me. When I went home, I just sent them the Wikipedia article named transubstantiation. And And to answer the question, did they ever reply about that? No. Because it
Of
clearly
course
says
that
this is the
happens.
doctrine of the Catholic Church.
I love that you followed up,
Yeah.
just to be sure they didn't forget about it when they got home. Outstanding. Okay, last question then. Someone else was wondering, and this may be something we can get into more detail on a little bit later on in the Hangout too. They're wondering about this concept of a soul. And I think this came up when we were talking about was learning that Santa Claus wasn't real traumatic for you. Someone else was wondering, how do you get over the concept of a soul? Presumably having learned that from a young age.
So I would have to wonder what they mean by get over. Do they mean stop believing in it if you don't think it's true? Is the person still here? They could follow that up, maybe.
Yeah, if you're still here and this was your question, feel free to write in the chat any follow-up explanation. Otherwise, yeah, I'm not sure either if it means how do you get past the belief in it, or how do you get over the trauma of realizing if you don't believe in it anymore. Okay, they're talking about believing it. Okay.
So if it's belief, I would put it to the standard of how you should believe in everything else that you believe in, including a screaming cat. Is there evidence for it? And unfortunately, for the concept of living on after death, no, there is not. So one can believe what one wants to believe, but if one wants to be rational about it, you should only believe in things that have evidence behind them. And there is no evidence for that. As Matt Dillahunty is famous for saying over and over on the Atheist Experience, it's like the most disproven concept in all of religion.
Fair enough. That sums that up. Yeah, absolutely. I think doesn't he also say something like the time to believe in something is when there's sufficient evidence to do so?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a general expression in scientific skepticism that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And just saying, oh yeah, my friend had a near-death experience, therefore it's real, is not extraordinary evidence. So, and unfortunately, we understand how the brain works to the extent of changing how it functions with drugs or surgery or damage to it. It changes your personality, it changes your memories, it changes everything about you. There's no logic behind that. Therefore, there's something outside of you that is that. It seems to be, from everything we can tell, your brain is your mind, and that's all there is to it. It's a biochemical machine that functions and creates consciousness. And since we can change it in all sorts of ways in the physical world, how would that apply to the soul? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Your explanation makes sense to me. I think somebody else in the chat made a good point that maybe the more difficult part about this, or for some people, the more difficult part may be the implications of deciding that there's not a lot of reason to believe in a soul, and then the implication being that death is
because that means life is finite. That is the difficult part for people when you've been, if you were never convinced as a young person and never told that was the case, it wouldn't bother you because that would just be part of reality. Life is finite and we have to make the best of our life on earth with the time we have, as opposed to this fiction, because there's no evidence behind it, of wishful thinking plus I want to believe it, that, oh, you live forever because this thing called the soul. And then when you find out, oh, there really isn't good evidence for that, and then you're sad about that. Well, that's not the fault of the critical thinking. That's the fault of the religion for telling you that in the first place without sufficient reason to have told you that.
And also, too, like the way I look at, like, did I worry about the time before I was born?
Right.
Does anyone worry about that? No. It's just because we have an awareness of life and life is finite that we worry about what's going to happen afterwards. But
right,
everything that what's going to happen, it was exactly what happened before I was born.
And coming from the Christian perspective, I'm actually happier about that than if the Christian perspective were right, and 99% of humanity would be in a torture cell for eternity.
Right.
For a thought time.
I would like to avoid that.
Yeah.
Or I should say, I'm happy to realize that it seems likely that we will all be avoiding that.
Right. That's a good way of putting it.
And,
There's no good reason to believe that that's the case, right?
and also too, if you realize that this is all we got, it makes your life more precious. It
Yeah.
makes the existence that you have give more meaning, and wanting to do squeeze as much joy and wonder out of this life that you can, that's the way I kind of look at it, because it is finite. And they used to terrify me. Now I find it very freeing, because now I'm like, okay, then I got to make the most of the time here why I got it, because this is it.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah, to me, that feels optimistic. It's like every day is a holiday. You have something to celebrate. It's life.
Yeah, exactly. Like let it go. Like fear, the fear's not going to do any damn good. So let it go. I'm going to.
Alfred just put a good comment in. That would be a good T-shirt. Smile. There is no hell.
Yep.
I love it. We need to add that to the T-shirt.
There is one that says like, go ahead and masturbate. You're not going to hell.
Well, it's not like religious people don't do that anyway. They just feel bad about it.
Yeah,
exactly. Just don't feel bad about it.
Yeah.
And on that note, we will conclude our holiday advice.
Go have a Christmas orgasm, everybody.
Or better yet, give somebody else, as they say on
Thursday?
Another of the ACA shows. All righty. Well, we are going to move quickly into our Hangout so we can turn off the recording and just hang out with all of you fine people. A couple of housekeeping items before we do. We are going on a 2-week break for RfRx. We will be back on January 9th, but the next 2 Mondays, we will not be here. Now, remember, the support groups are still meeting. The online community will all still be there. Everyone is not going away, but we're just taking a couple of weeks to give our volunteers a few weeks to rest and relax and recuperate, and for me to catch up on my giant email backlog. And we will be right back with you again in 2 weeks. So join us on January 9th for the first episode of 2023. And in the meantime, if you want to catch up on your RfRx that you may not have seen, go ahead and check out our podcast or our link on YouTube to watch some of the previous episodes. And feel free to send me more email at rfrx@recoveringfromreligion.org if you have questions, comments, death threats, well wishes for the holidays.
Creative death threats. They have to be the creative ones.
They have to be creative, yes. Or, things like ideas for future shows that you'd like to see. So send those over to us. And don't forget to also check out our blog and our podcast in the meantime. And Helen, do you know where people can find us on the social medias?
Yes. So I know all of you are on the socials because you are internet savvy people. So if you want to see any of our previous recordings, please go to our YouTube channel. Also too, we are on the Facebook. We have a main page. So that's a good way to keep up what's going on with recovering from religion. We also have a support group page where you can get additional support and meet with agents and volunteers from recovering from religion. We are also on the Twitter for as long as it exists, because Elon wants to burn it to the ground. So, but okay, fine. But as long as we're on there, please consider going to Twitter. That's where you can get little updates about what's going on with recovering from religion. So please check out our Twitter page. We are also on Instagram. We are on the TikToks. So if you want to engage, like, subscribe, heart, share, please do all that, because that helps people getting connected with us and all that we do here at Recovering from Religion. So please consider doing some engagement on the socials, because we'd like that, because we want people to come hang out with us and be 20% cooler.
Hey, regarding Twitter, just before I came on, somebody said, oh, I think Elon resigned from Twitter. I said, what? And I Googled it. And no, but he did do a poll to ask Twitter users if he should, and they said yes. So we're going to see what's happening, because that's how we decided to put Trump back on, because Trump got 1 or 2 points in the poll that said yes, higher than the no's. So he put Trump back on because he has to go with his polls. Now I'm going to see if he resigns.
See if he fires himself. Okay.
Okay, so
Stay
maybe it will
tuned.
not burn to the ground. And so
So you can still follow us there
that's
for
right.
now.
But you only want to follow us though on Twitter.